got the cows all in the barn. I just got the walk scraped. Now we're going to get the milkers and everything ready in the milk house here before we start milking. These are our milking units here. These are just a De La Valle, I believe they're called a Super Flow milker. We use, these are IBA, triangular inflation. And what that means is inside the bore here, where the teat goes, for years all inflations were just round inside. These are triangular shaped. I don't know, we've had good luck with them. Some people don't like them. It seems like with the jerseys and stuff, they maybe fit a little bit better. And I think we maybe get a better milk out with them. And then we have our pulsator here, which is what causes the inflation to constrict and retract as it's milking. We had a De La Valle, they're called a Delitron pulsator. They're an electronic pulsator, and we were really happy with them. The only reason we got rid of them is last winter we were having some issues with stray voltage, and the controller that controls how they pulse in the milk house here, something happened to that and was giving off a lot of stray voltage in there, around $1,000 to replace. And I was able to buy these pulsators. They just run on vacuum. There's no electronic at all with them. The neighbor has used them and he had real good luck with them, so we thought we'd try them, and they've so far been really good. I've been really happy with them. I believe they're called an Impulse is the brand of them, and they do everything we want. And not that I had any issue with the De La Valle. They were very good pulsator, but I didn't want to spend. We bought 4 of these brand new for less than what a new pulse controller would cost for the other ones, so that's the only reason I switched. And the De La Valle units, we've been happy with them. That's actually what my grandpa had. I did switch to Vomatic ones for a while. I didn't care for them. The claws were all plastic. On these, this part here, if you can see, is stainless. And the bowl here is plastic. On the Vomatic we had, the whole thing was plastic, and they were really light. And I just had trouble with the cows milking out real good because there wasn't enough weight pulling down on them. And the Vomatic pulsator I didn't like. This milk house gets really steamy in the wintertime when you're running a lot of hot water in here to wash, and that moisture really affected them. Now with these ones and also the De La Valle ones we had, I had no trouble with the moisture at all. That didn't seem to bother, but the Vomatic, I really seemed to bother him. Now the guy I got him from, he had a lot bigger milk house. He didn't have any issue. I don't think he had the steam build up like I did in here, but what we've got now seems to work good for us. And real happy with it. I know there's many different brands and many different ways to go, but this works good for us. Now we're going to put the filter in. We got this pipe here. It's just a short pipe with a 90-degree that goes into the bulk tank. I'll turn the camera here so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Okay, first we'll put this pipe into the tank. Just a little plug at the top, and this slides right in. Just a little plug, rubber plug to plug the hole. And then we'll unclamp this one. This just goes on there just when we wash to reach down to the sink. Then we'll grab our filter parts out of here. And a new filter, and every milking gets a new clean filter. They're just, I'm not exactly sure what they're made out of, just a filtering material, and this spring slides inside there to keep it spread out. We put that in there. We fold the top over a little bit, and then this rubber plug holds the filter on, and it also acts as a seal for that joint in the pipe. So we'll put that in there. One thing we found out with this filter, you got to make sure you don't have too much, because if you got too much excess in there, when the milk pumps through, it'll actually flip the filter up inside and plug the hole off. We had fought with that for quite a while, trying to figure out what was going on there, because the old way, they used to just have an O-ring that went around to hold it on. I didn't have this rubber plug, so once I got that, it was a little bit of a learning experience. Okay, we've got the filter pushed in there. I'm going to just swing it over, line it up with this pipe, and then this is just a clamp here, clamps together. Put that on, and clamp it down. Now, when we take these, we'll take these units out to the barn. They're just on a hook like this, hooks on the line. This end is where the milk goes. It's just a plastic cane, and there's inlets on the pipe this clamps into, and then this has a separate pipe that this goes on for vacuum. That's just vacuum. There's no milk that goes in that to run that. And then of course this end goes on the cow. And it's a stainless line, runs around the whole barn, and then it comes into the milk house here. If I can get this loose, I'll show you. We have, we'll come over here, this glass receiver jar here. And this has a pump down at the bottom. I don't know if you can see, it's kind of dark down there, but there's an electric pump here. So the milk will flow into this jar through these pipes, come down, and then there's blue rods in there, and what those do is they sense the milk. And once it gets up to a certain height, it'll touch the third rod, and that turns the motor on, and it just pumps it up this pipe here, overhead, all the way over, bear with me here, over to the bulk tank pipe up here through the filter and into the tank. And that's pretty simple. And then when we wash, like I said, you run all the milk out into the tank, swing the line over, and then you rinse the system out, and so none of the milk or any of the wash soap or anything goes into the tank. And here, this is our vacuum pump. If you hear me talk about the vacuum pump, it's this thing. It's kind of dirty. It sits back here in the corner in the barn. But what this does is it creates all the vacuum for the whole milking system. We just put this in about 4 or 5 years ago, and this is actually what they call a variable speed pump. The old pump that we had, and most of them has been the technology up till recently, the pump would run full speed to get maximum vacuum, and then in order to regulate it down to what you need for milking, they just had a regulator on there that would let enough air in to bring the vacuum down to what you need and hold it there. But your pump is running full speed all the time. Well, what this does is there's a sensor in the milk house in the vacuum line that constantly senses the vacuum. And the motor is run off, there's a computer basically in the milk house, and that controls the speed of the motor. This is a 3-phase motor, and then there's a phase converter in the milk house because we only have single-phase power here on the farm, so it converts it to 3-phase. And the reason they do that is because this regulates the vacuum by speeding the motor up and down. So, like if you've got all your milkers like sucking air, so like when you're washing, if the sink goes empty and they're sucking air, this will run full speed wide open. But when you've got all the milkers on the cows, and you're milking along, and it doesn't need to run full speed. The motor will actually only turn about half speed. It saves on the electric bill. I know some people say that if you're not milking, 100 cows or more, it doesn't really pay. I don't know. It did cut down on our electric bill. We did figure out, though, that the stray voltage trouble we were having, not necessarily it was from this pump, but the exhaust of the pump, there's a muffler here, and the exhaust goes up, and it goes out the wall to outside. It just blows. All the air it pulls out of the system, it blows outside. And on the outside of that pipe, there's a rubber flap that hangs over the end. And that's to prevent, like when you shut this pump off and there's vacuum in your system, it's to prevent it from spinning everything backwards. Because if you spin the motor backwards, the motor will actually generate electricity and push it back into your system. Well, pretty much by accident, I found out that flap had fallen off. So when you would shut this off, or if this revs up real high, like when you're washing and it sucks air and then all of a sudden it gets water, so it really slows down, it will actually slow down far enough that it would cause that motor to spin backwards periodically as it was wash cycle or when you would shut it off, because that flap was gone. We messed around for close to a year trying to figure out. Things would go bad, we'd replace them, and something else would go bad, and even that pulse controller is wired into the same circuit. And actually, I just stumbled on it by chance that flap was gone. I put it back on, not even realizing, and all of a sudden things started getting way better. So if anybody out there is dairy farming and they're having issues with that, is one thing I would definitely check, is that exhaust on your pump is sealing up good, because that really caused us a lot of trouble. And anyhow, okay, so then this PVC pipe, there's a big tank here. It's just a vacuum reserve tank. And that goes up. There's one line that goes into the milk house, the big line there. That feeds into that receiver jar to put milk in, to suck the milk in. And these other lines here, there's two of them. They go around the barn. That's the ones the pulsator's hooked to when we're milking. So I just wanted to touch on this vacuum pump a little bit. Like I said, it's kind of a newer technology than just the old style one. And it's a really important piece. It's kind of the main heart of the whole milking system, is to have good, consistent vacuum. The pump we had previously was an old pump I had bought used, and it produced good vacuum, but I had some issues with it, and I took it apart to repair some things, and the whole inside was really worn and had a lot of hours on it. And I could have bought another used pump, but our intention is to keep milking for quite a while, so this pump was pretty expensive, but hopefully it'll last, especially with that variable speed. They said that saves a lot of wear and tear on the pump and the motor, because majority of the time it's only running about half speed, especially when you're milking it, and it's much quieter. The old pump, when the old pump was running, you couldn't even talk to another person in pretty much anywhere in the barn. It was so loud, and this one is much quieter unless it's running wide open. But so I just wanted to touch on that and kind of let you know, when I talk about vacuum pump, that this is what I'm talking about. All right, we're going to start milking here now. We got the vacuum pump turned on. So now first we're going to milk Dory here. I've got this pre-dip here. This is we put on first. We dip all the cows with this first. This loosens up any dirt on there, softens it up, and it also has stuff in there to kill any bacteria or germs that are in there. You should let it sit on there for at least a good 30 seconds. Gets a good kill on anything, and helps it to clean off better. If we happen to get a cow that's really dirty, we have washcloths here. We will wash them first with warm soapy water, and then dip them. But most of these are usually pretty clean. A lot of times you run into, in the springtime, if it gets really muddy outside or something like that, they'll get a little dirtier. But all right, it's been sitting about 30 seconds, a little more. Now I got just a paper towel here. Clean off each one. Make sure there's no dirt on it. Good and clean. Sometimes they'll dance around a little bit like this just because their udders are full of milk and they're ready to be milked. And their oxytocin in their system actually causes them to let their milk down, so they want to get milked. Usually I'll squirt a few squirts out of each one just to make sure there's no mastitis, anything like that, and that does help with the somatic cell count in the milk as well. The first 3 or 4 squirts of milk have the most in it. Hook those up there, and then there's on the bottom of this, there's a button that turns the vacuum on and off to these. So when you want to take it off, you pull that button down, it'll shut the vacuum off, and then the milk can come off. Those on. And each cow varies on how long it takes them to milk, depending on how much milk they have. And some cows will let their milk down faster than others will, but so that kind of varies depending on the cow. But that's about it. And then the milk just goes up the hose and into the milk house, into the bulk tank.
Hey, Dad.
Here's the jar now. The milk is coming in. You can see it coming in through one of the lines up there from the barn. And pretty soon here now it should get high enough it'll kick that pump on down there in the corner and pump it into the bulk tank. And there it goes, pumped it just down through this line and up overhead to where we put the filter in and right into the tank. And in this tank, this holds 800 gallons. They pick us up every 3 days and we don't fill it. It's actually bigger than what we need, but the old one we had in here was 400 gallons. It was a lot smaller, and when they switched us to a 3-day pickup, it wasn't big enough. This one was one that fit in here. We got it from a neighbor that quit milking a few years ago. It's a little tight in here, but it fits pretty decent for its size. And it's refrigerated. There's a compressor. That hole in the wall over there's a compressor, and it keeps the milk between 38 and 40 degrees. And that's about it for the milking. I'm going to go back now and keep milking.
What gutters do they put them in?